So, ladies and gentlemen, happy Tuesday. We're recording from our secondary office at the Great Best Western in Woodstock, New Brunswick, one of the best hotel chains in all of North America. We appreciate the Best Western staff putting us up because in the Canterbury region where I'm from, we may not have power for the next 6 or 7 days. So, I'm doing this in tribute to the good people here. So, today we're going to be talking about a little bit of baseball trivia, one of the most head scratching years in baseball history. We all know about the Big Red Machine winning in the 75 and 76 World Series, beating Boston in 7 and Yankees in 4 straight. Now, we thought 1977 was going to be a great year, but due to being outcoached by Tommy Lasorda's squad and some really strange trades, good and bad, that Cincinnati made, the ability to win the three-peat was thrown out the window. Now, the team finished in second place in the NL West, losing the division in quite a shocker. It had a record of 88 and 74, due in part to the poor pitching staff until they got Tom Seaver. We'll get that in a second. They ended up 10 games behind the LA Dodgers. The Reds were managed by the great Sparky Anderson and played their home games at Riverfront. Now, the big offseason trade, of course, was the heart and soul of what he called the RBI production for the Reds. Tony Perez was traded to the Expos with Will McEnany for Woody Fryman and Dale Murray. Now, Perez had some good seasons with Montreal, later went on to Boston and the Phillies, but he had a couple of more good years left in him, and I think that really hurt the chemistry of the team. Now, ironically, one of the most interesting baseball players in history, Steve Christmas, who I saw play against the Montreal Expos a few years later, was signed as an amateur free agent by the Reds, a highly touted prospect. Now, Joel Youngblood, of course, was going to be in their future plans, but he decided to go with relief help to the Cardinals for Bill Cottle. Now, there was only a two-team race in the division, Dodgers again, 98 and 64, and the big factor here was the fact that we're just as good on the road that they were at home. The Reds were terrible on the road, finishing one game under 500, which was not what they would normally do. Now, the big trade, of course, when Tom Seaver, who ended up 14-3 in the season for the Reds, was traded to the Reds for Pat Zachary, Doug Flynn, Steve Henderson, and Dan Norman, which basically just a bunch of secondary prospects. So either a salary dump or a personality dump. Now, eventually, Raleigh Eastwood was also traded by the Reds to the Cardinals for Doug Capella, and I think that hurt their starting staff. And this happened on June 15th. Another deal, Mike Caldwell, a very good starter, was traded to the Reds for the Brewers for 2 minor leaguers, so we're a dumping contract. And Gary Nolan again was traded as well. Now, the team was tremendous. Now get this. This was the lineup. Johnny Bench catching, Dan Dreesen at first, taking over Tony Perez, Joe Morgan at second, Dave Concepcion at shortstop, Pete Rose at third, George Foster with an outstanding season, 52 home runs and 149 RBIs. Cesar Geronimo put up some tremendous numbers, 10 home runs and 52 ribbies, while Ken Griffey Jr. With his big hit total, 318, 12 home runs, 57 RBIs. So Bench hit 275, Dreesen hit 300, Morgan at 288, Concepcion batted 271, Rose batted 311, Foster bought a 320, and Geronimo 266, and Griffey 318. So what exactly went wrong here? Well, here's it goes. The starting staff was kind of decimated because you had Fred Norman as kind of the secondary ace on the team, only a 500 pitcher in the Bryn Smith era, 14 and 13. Now, Seaver pitched 20 games, going 14-3, would get this 124 strikeouts in 20 games, a great total. But Jack Billingham, too, went 10 and 10. Now, Woody Fryman added a little bit. He went 5 and 5, while, again, the relief corps wasn't as strong as a lot of people felt. Now, Pedro Borbon was a relief corps, but it was by committee, because him, Dale Murray, Marty Semiento, Raleigh Eastwood before he was traded, and Mike Caldwell, each had a save that year. But again, no concentrated starting staff really hurt them, especially on the road. And they were losing key games to secondary teams like Montreal and the Braves. Now, this year, of course, it was his year. George Foster was home run champion in 52, RBI champion in 149, almost won the Triple Crown, but Foster, again, was a National League MVP. The All-Star game was a plethora of Reds. Johnny Bench started at catcher. Joe Morgan started at second base. Concepcion started at shortstop. George Foster started the outfield with Seaver, Rose, and Griffey reserve. So how in the hell could he have lost that year? Well, it's like this. The season didn't go as they expected. They had some difficulty in some of their key road series. I know they lost some tough contests against the Dodgers. Now, they ended the season quite high, but they had kind of a dip in July where they should have won more games than they lost. I think they had a six or seven game actually losing streak in July. That really killed them. Terrible July. They didn't start well as well. They lost 5 in the first 7 games, so it was terrible. They ended fast. But I mean, you got to understand, for what we saw with 75 and 76 with the Reds, they should have been a lot better for what they were. Now, what really hurt them, they didn't have much bench strength. The players couldn't, get a day off. Now, Ray Knight was coming up as well. He had played in 80 games in spot duty. He could have backed up a couple of players. But like I said, I look at that starting staff, ladies and gentlemen, and it was just not really what the Reds needed. Now, Paul Moskow, a no-name player, was relied upon for a number of starts, 19. Doug Capella only went 7-8 with 16 games started. And Woody Fryman at the time was not say past his prime, but pretty close to it. So that year they had 6 or 7 starters, and Tom Hume started a few games as well, with Pat Zachary and Soto as well. So it was completely bizarre, ladies and gentlemen. They couldn't decide on the best starting pitchers for the team. But you look at the 1977 season, Rod Carew was MVP in the AL, and Minnesota had no chance to win that division against Kansas City. And here it is, Tom Seaver came over, and he still couldn't get it done. It was too little too late. Maybe if he would have traded for him earlier, it would have worked out. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're wondering why the 77 Reds should have won, and the remnants of the Reds with the Phillies in 83, and he did win the 79 NL West pennant. They had a strong team that year. Bench was getting older, slowing down. Pete Rose, there was some indication he wasn't really the straw that stirred the drink like he was before. And Griffey and Dreesen, who waited for Perez to leave, didn't have the similar numbers. Like, Perez was good for 90 RBIs every season. We all know that. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the story of the Cincinnati Reds in 1977. If you like what we're doing here, we're a vintage baseball podcast. Give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share. By the way, if anybody in New Brunswick listening to this, please check your updates on the New Brunswick Power Outage website. It'll give you time to be when it's going to be back. There's 100,000 customers pretty much that have lost their power, give or take 10,000 in the last number of hours. It's been a rough go, but we might get a white Christmas and a white New Year's Day if the snow comes in. If not, it's going to be, I think, a double whammy. So, 57 degrees Fahrenheit in New Brunswick yesterday. Amazing. Thanks for listening. Bye.